Common extensors of the wrist and fingers. Origin. Lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Insertion. Dorsal surfaces of the wrist and fingers. Action. Extension of the wrist and fingers. Innervation. That's right, radial nerve. And don't forget the supinator, deep in the posterior forearm, assisting in forearm rotation and supination. Let's take a look at the muscles of the posterior forearm. These are the common extensors of the wrist and fingers. In the superficial layer, we have Brachioradialis, Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus, Extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis, Extensor Digitorum, Extensor digiti minimi, Extensor Carpi ulnaris. These 6 muscles make up the superficial layer of the posterior forearm. Extend the hand, extend the wrist, fingers. In the deep layer, you'll find these 5 muscles: the supinator, abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, extensor pollicis longus, and the extensor indicis. So all of the superficial extensors share a common origin, the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. You can see the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Here's the humerus here, and the lateral epicondyle being here. And so if we start throwing those muscles back in there, there we go. We just put the Extensor Carpi ulnaris back in, all right? We just put back in the Extensor digiti minimi. And notice here's the humerus. Okay, there we go. Extensor digitorum. There we go. Supinator. This was the Extensor Carpi Radialis brevis. Extensor digitorum, and this here, supinator. Again, here's the humerus. Here's the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. And here, of course, is the Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus. Just running over that lateral epicondyle of the humerus. And then the Brachioradialis. Insertion. The dorsal surfaces of the wrist and fingers. Their tendons cross the back of the wrist and extend into the hand. Action, extension of the wrist and fingers, opposite the flexors. Innervation, radial nerve, innervation. That's the same nerve that powers all the wrist and finger extensors. So, again, common extensors of the wrist and fingers. Origin, lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Insertion, dorsal surfaces of the wrist and fingers. Action, extension of the wrist and fingers. Innervation, that's right, radial nerve. The posterior is a common extensors